Hey guys, welcome back to the Sermon on the Mount series. I'm glad to have you back with us. We are in chapter 7. We're in the home stretch. It's our last chapter. And in this chapter, Jesus begins to introduce to his disciples teaching method and learning method. These two components make up discipleship and they are linked. They naturally go together. I have instructed you today, even you. Have I not written to you excellent things of counsels and knowledge, that I may make you know the certainty of the words of truth, that you may answer words of truth to those who send to you? So Jesus is going to show us how these two processes can go wrong if it's not paired with faith. And that was the problem the Jewish leaders had at the time. They no longer served God in the heart, but only pretended to. My people would not heed my voice, and Israel would have none of me. So I gave them over to their own stubborn heart, to walk in their own counsels. The haters of the Lord would pretend submission to him. Instead of working with God to lift man towards true life, the teachers of Israel decided to abuse godliness to put down the people. The spirit behind the law is to revive hopeless men, not to utterly destroy them. It was always meant to draw men to the gates of heaven to await their Messiah. The Pharisees strayed from this. Although they had the law, they rejected the Spirit of God. In other words, they stopped learning from him. They did not understand the knowledge he provided them because they twisted it for their own benefit, leading people to serve men instead of their maker. Once a teacher starts misleading souls by selfishness, discipleship breaks down and hypocrisy is born. The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, yet they bind heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For you neither go in yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. Therefore, you will receive greater condemnation. So how is the law to be wielded effectively as a prod instead of a death blow? Well, first and foremost, real faith in God must be present. Possessing His Spirit and working within it are the prerequisites for learning and teaching godliness. The vision to accomplish His purposes come only from Him. It's pretty simple. So if faith is absent, if a man isn't looking to God to care for his own soul, that disqualifies him from discipleship altogether. There's no pretending faith like the Pharisees were doing. A true minister of God understands that he is a student first, applying wisdom before he is able to teach it. That is key, and it's where we pick up in Jesus' sermon. He says to his disciples, "Judge not, that you be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with what measure you use, it will be measured back to you." Another way to say it is this: whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and he who rolls a stone will have it roll back on him. Jesus warns that men who abuse the scriptures and use them only to destroy, minus the mercy part, will end up having the scriptures come back and bite them in the butt. This is because all men are cut from the same cloth. If I were to be harsh with any sinner, that same harshness would fall back on me because I share in the same sinful flesh as they do. In other words, no flesh has the position to seek another's destruction by the law because the law destroys us all. For example, if I was to demand the death sentence for somebody who lied to me, true impartial justice would deliver that same punishment back to me because all men are liars. The error would be found with me. I'm placing myself above the law, seeing myself more righteously than I ought, which couldn't be further from the truth. I'm not applying God's measure to myself, but one that I invented. This mindset results in all sorts of evil, and the Lord despises it. Who can say, "I have made my heart clean, I am pure from my sin"? Diverse weights and diverse measures, they are both alike an abomination to the Lord. The Lord's voice cries to the city, Shall I count pure those with wicked scales, and with the bag of deceitful weights? So 2 different standards of justice are produced by the offender that he may appear righteous before men, and it's all for the sake of earthly gain. These are the secrets that go on within the wicked heart. He thinks within himself, rules for thee, but not for me. I decide where justice is applied, because I sit in the seat of Moses. Now this was the wicked thinking of the Pharisees and the scribes, but God could plainly see it. Hear now, O heads of Jacob, and you rulers of the house of Israel, is it not for you to know justice? Yet you abhor justice, and pervert all equity. You build up Zion with bloodshed. Her priests teach for pay, and her prophets divine for money. Yet they lean on the Lord and say, is not the Lord among us? Evil men do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand all. This is a sobering thought. Real justice strikes everybody down, and when it's our necks on the line, all of a sudden, mercy is extremely relevant. It will change our proud attitudes. All of a sudden now we're the ones needing help, and we'll see others differently too. We can now relate to every man's plight because we are all under the same condemnation of true justice. But if somebody doesn't understand this, they will declare their own goodness and claim that others are the problem. They need to be fixed, not me. I've done nothing wrong. Christ elaborates further on this. And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye? And look, a plank is in your own eye. Hypocrite! First remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. That means as far as I, as an individual person is concerned, the law is pointed directly at me. Not Bob, not Jim, but at you. When the law is considered, it needs to be applied to yourself first. You are your biggest problem. I am my worst enemy. The only evil that we have any say over is the evil that is found within ourselves. There is a beast that is seeking to rule over every man from within, and he does. Yet God is able to slay it by the power of Jesus Christ. When a life is set free by this power, God's Spirit flows out of him as a byproduct, which helps others with their specks. So God's word focuses on the individual alone, yet this benefits all. So as far as we as individuals are concerned, ask God for help with the massive plank in your own eye first. Then you can worry about the particles in other people's eyes. Paul says it like this: Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one examine his own work, and then he will have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another. For each one shall bear his own load. And that's how it works, meaning before you point fingers, you need God's spirit of gentleness. This is what every teacher of the Bible needs to know. Your first obstacle will always be you, so consider yourself first. How does your life stand up to the scrutiny that you're hurling at everybody else? When we practice this, there should be immediate backtracking, and the desire to be merciful should well up within us. Being a good student first will produce a good teacher. Jesus continues, Do not give what is holy to the dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you in pieces. God's deeper wisdom is likened to treasure. Knowledge beyond repentance and salvation is what this is referring to. Godly guidance is like pearls in the eyes of a believer. However, in the eyes of an unbeliever, this is perceived as a pile of garbage. That's what Christ means when he mentions the dogs and the swine. They are symbolic of a scoffer. Do not correct a scoffer, lest he hate you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. To be wise is to have faith, and that's what's necessary to make the teacher-student method function properly. Now, as Christians, we can't expect unbelievers to appreciate God's wisdom because they have no allegiance to him in the first place, nor can we expect behavior modification from them. Bombarding them with these things will only further drive them from Christ. Rather, respectfully be an example of peace and kindness to them with the gospel of Christ ever before you. The pearls of spiritual knowledge come after Christ is accepted. Heavenly instruction is meant only to grow a child of God. It will only grate the nerves of an unbeliever. So now that we know spiritual growth is linked to learning from God directly, how do we do that? How do we learn from him directly? How do we attain godly counsel? Well, Jesus leaves us with this simple answer. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened. This statement really stands out because it's so simple, yet profound. He just lists a bunch of mundane actions people do every day that have some sort of outcome eventually. Acts in which a corresponding act always follows. If you pose a question, you'll get a reply. If you search for a solution, you're going to eventually find one. And if you go out door knocking, one of them will certainly open to you. All this is saying is that when you put feet to your earthly inquiries, you will eventually get responses, as opposed to just sitting on your hands, never asking, never seeking, and never knocking. If you do these things, you are guaranteed 0 responses. Simple. Jesus continues. Or what man is there among you who, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will he give him a serpent? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father, who is in heaven, give good things to those who ask him? Jesus boosts our confidence in God by giving us this analogy. But let me explain part of this. In this example, he implies that his listeners know how to do good. This is called our conscience, and this is what affords decency in society and many other things. That's why we're able to ask, seek, and knock in a world of evils, yet still receive feedback. But in this verse, Jesus zooms in a little bit closer. He specifies how earthly fathers instinctively know to do good to their own sons. So if a sensate man can perform good for his son, how much greater can the Father of goodness do to his created offspring? If we are guaranteed responses on earth, how much more sure is a heavenly reply? It's crucial that Christians get this. When sincerely asking him for wisdom as students of God, he will always be overjoyed to supply it. Now, this is not the case with everything in prayer, just wisdom leading to righteousness. But if that's our desire, a hunger and thirst for righteousness, he guarantees it. And once it's granted, our transformation should begin. As time goes by, we should be looking more and more like Jesus Christ, the Father's perfect example. Just as Christ is more than happy to justify us and pass life-giving wisdom on to sinners, sanctifying us in it, that same desire should be found within us when it's concerning the lost world. Therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. This is the way of the disciple, how a godly man is produced, teaching God's ways to ourselves first and foremost before berating others, applying God's instruction most stringently to ourselves, which produces the beneficial byproduct for others to grab hold of. We are to be people of gentleness, not to chase people down and beat them into submission with the Bible. This would be abusing it in a self-righteous way. Rather, let us treat it with reverence as a tool, a powerful tool that frees all sinners from the penalty of sin and brings unto man, sinful man, a true righteousness by faith.